Good morning, everybody. Welcome to En Vivo, the Express News' live event series where you, the viewer, get to ask questions about the topics and the issues impacting your city. My name is Melissa Mano. I'm an education reporter here at the Express News. And today I'm joined by some wonderful guests who will provide some insight into the controversial new state law barring students from using their cell phones during the school day. So to my right today, I have Maureen Molak. Maureen co-founded the David's Legacy Foundation in 2016 after her 16-year-old son, David, an Alamo Heights High School student, died by suicide after experiencing relentless cyberbullying. Maureen has been a tireless advocate for online child safety since. Thank you, Maureen, for joining us. We also have Edgewood ISD Superintendent Eduardo Hernandez. Mr. Hernandez joined Edgewood in 2018. And in 2024 was named the Region 20 Superintendent of the Year. We also have former Churchill High School principal Todd Bloomer, who spent 3 decades in public education before this summer transitioning to a role with the Archdiocese of San Antonio. Thank you guys all so much for joining us. And before we get into the questions, I just want to remind our viewers that this is an opportunity for you to ask your burning questions on this topic. And you can do so by clicking the Q&A question on your screen and typing your question in there. So with that, we will get started. My first question this morning is for Dr. Hernandez.
Okay.
This law requires school districts to adopt and implement policies barring, student phone use on campus. Can you tell me what Edgewood ISD has adopted and how you guys are enforcing that?
So we currently are enforcing the regulation fully. Students have been informed that during the school day, which is what the law says, that during the school day, they are not allowed to be on their cell phones, and that cell phones must be out of line of sight. They must be completely turned off. They must be in their backpacks until the end of the school day. And so we communicated that to the students, communicated to the parents, to the community. And so far, we've heard very little pushback from the kids. I think a lot of that is also because kids are very savvy in terms of their keeping up with what's happening in their community and at the state. And this is a particular topic that's important to kids. I mean, obviously, they're on the phone all the time. And so last year, I recall during my student luncheons when I'd visit with them, just to get an input of what's going on in the district, they were aware that there was movement in the legislative session. And so, opened up the forum. I think that's important with students. They need an opportunity to speak. A lot of times we talk at them and not to them. And I think it's important that we slow it down. And so people can get real comfortable around some free food, Chick-fil-A, and just kind of talk about what's this going to look like? What are the benefits of it? What are the benefits and what are disadvantages from their perspective, right? And of course, typical worries. Well, how's my mom going to get a hold of me? How am I going to get a hold of my mom? And so we had a lot of conversations with not just high school. The little ones you may think are disinterested, but they're not, especially the 4th and 5th graders. And so really just getting ahead of it was important. And then, of course, our team board also did a lot of work with it. So for us, that's been real important. And then, of course, just dispelling some of the, everywhere from rumors to just misinformation that tends to happen more so with the adults. But so far, it's been really good with it. We've been good with it.
You mentioned there the 4th and the 5th graders are interested.
Yes.
I'm curious, are those kids the ones also that are coming to school with cell phones? Do kids that young have cell phones now?
Some do, 5th graders, but they're also, I've noticed with our kids is they have been told by parents, don't use it during these times. So we've heard really nothing from anybody, but the little ones, they're a lot more compliant. I just didn't want to pass up the opportunity to speak to them about what's coming. Remember, today's issues for our current high school kids may not be their issues when they get to high school. So really just having that platform for them to speak to the superintendent or the principal and just say, these are the things that are important to me, and teaching them that advocacy is important and that they should use their inside voice. We don't tell them that enough. And I think it's really important.
And one clarification too, it's not just cell phones, right? It's other, can you tell me about the other devices?
Cell phones, watches, which in our particular instance, we don't really have a lot of the watches, but cell phones, iPads, even AirPods, things like that, those are all off limits. And so they must be hidden. And so I haven't heard anything from my teacher, my faculty advisory committee. I haven't heard any pushback either. So I think we were real clear with it up front. And so, you always have a kid or two that may try to push it, but we really haven't had much.
Great.
Yeah.
And Mr. Bloomer, you were a school leader for many years. Can you tell me a little bit about how you saw cell phones, the role of cell phones on campus sort of evolve and how student behavior changed just over the years?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the question. Great analogy of everything that you said. I think consistency is what's key to help this policy, just to start that way. There's pockets of schools that have tried this in the past, and we tried this last year, and we went bell to bell, no cell last year, and saw great results with consistency. And so passing a law gives a lot of the consistency. The cell phone started out as great ways to be able to keep in touch, great ways to be able to, stay in touch with people. Social media started that way. And then it really evolved into just a bad platform. It evolved into an unsupervised playground of places in which we gave kids cell phones, and maybe not fifth grade, but sixth and seventh grade. And that became babysitters. And we went to bed at night and our kids played on their phones until all hours of the night. We really didn't have an idea what was going on. We hoped it was good, but we really had no idea what was going on. And so that made it very difficult. So for school leaders, it became very challenging when you had access to every single thing in your pocket all the time. And it became a distraction to learning. It became a distraction to the school environment. It became an opportunity for kids to meet up at certain times throughout the day. It became opportunities for kids to post rumors or stuff along those lines. And really where one of the things that I really tried to become a champion in my last couple of years in public ed was really the Meta hosting fight pages and pages of hate and gossip and pages that were just not one person on whatever side of the aisle you sit on would ever agree that these were good sites to be hosted, yet they protected them. And so a kid would get bullied, a kid would have something posted online, or there would be a fight online that would be a negative connotation to your school, and you would try to report that to Meta or something, and you ran into just extreme roadblocks. Like you couldn't even get around them. It was just like, don't even. And so that became like a challenge, because those were hurtful, because the kid that was hurt, they're in their family, they came to the school and they wanted the school to do something about it, because these pages would tag your school logo in it, and they would make it seem like this was a school page, which it wasn't a school page. And it became such a distraction. And so last year we went bell to bell, no cell, and we saw tremendous decreases in discipline, office referrals. We found, and we'll probably have an opportunity to talk about it, but I would go around as you did to classes, and I would say, how do we like it? Okay, because we were bell to bell. We were a year ahead of that. And how do you like it? Besides the kid, oh, I hate it, right? They would say that. Yeah. One of them actually told me, I know more kids' names in my class than I have since elementary school.
Wow.
And that was like, okay, this is what we need to do, because kids are talking, kids are interacting. I know your name. Like, I don't know. That's just the man that sits over in the corner, or that guy. And so that was one of those things that I really saw. We saw grades go up. We saw referrals go down. We saw like a general happiness on the campus, because we moved away from that. And I'm so excited about the law itself now, because like that can go campus to campus and be able to kind of go from there. So hopefully that helps curb the question that you asked, was the problems that it posed to us on campus, like dealing with that. Because if we don't have our phones out, then we're not connected with what's going on elsewhere. We're paying attention to what's going on in world geography or algebra like we should.
Yeah. Right. And teachers throughout last year, what was the feedback that you were getting from them?
So it was, early on, we implemented it, and we had a lot of voice, but we went teachers and parents, and we implemented it. And I remember sitting there in the first faculty meeting and saying, okay, give me here, or here, right? Most were like here, right? Couple they were here. And I was like, okay, if you're here, you got to get here. Like, you got to get to here. You got to get to here. Because once they realized that the consistency on the campus of this is the expectation, and administration would go into classes and would correct people. And remember our expectation. And you could explain to a kid the reason why you shouldn't have a phone, because we're here to learn. Like 17-year-old, you have to explain sometimes to a 17-year-old to get them on board. And so now teachers love it, because they are able to do what they want to do, which is teach and inspire young people for a love of German or band or whatever it is. And so teachers are full. And I ask all my teacher friends, how's it going? And they all say it's going great. Like, honestly, that's it. And I ask kids that I see, how's it going? And they're like, oh, pretty good. And then you ask, there's a couple that they get in trouble. Yeah. Right. And so I'm a big fan, and I'm a proponent. I think it's going to do great things for kids' mental health and just schools in general. And then ultimately test scores. Yeah. Like ultimately we're going to do well academically because of this. So.
Yeah. Well, that sort of leads to my next question, and maybe you'll echo some of those points. But Ms. Mullock, you have really championed this bill, many bills, but this one in particular. Can you tell me why it was so important for you to see this pass, and what your hope is for, as we move forward and see this really be implemented at different school districts?
Well, 10 years ago, the cyberbullying of my son David happened on school campus, during the lunch hour and through passing periods. And there were a couple of videos that were taken during lunch that were sexual harassment videos that they used to torment David throughout the school day. And then that escalated and it moved to social media platforms, specifically Instagram and some of the other platforms. This was 10 years ago, and I knew at the time, like, why in the world would we have these devices that were so powerful in our schools that would allow students to do these types of things to each other? Like, I just felt like at the core of who I was, that there was something really wrong with that. And it's taken 10 years for us to get to where we are. And I think Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation, was what really gave us that push, that momentum to be able to feel like, hey, we can do this. And there's 18 states plus Washington, D.C. right now that have bell-to-bell, cell phone free schools and personal device free schools. And then there's other states out there right now that are working towards that. So, I feel like the tide is turning. We're really understanding the mental health consequences, the addictive nature of these devices, the fact that, especially after COVID, the stepping back and looking at empathy and how our students are treating one another, and the fact that the only way that you can really develop a strong sense of empathy is having those personal connections, those one-on-one connections. And we can't do that if our heads are down and in our devices during passing periods and lunchtime. Yeah. So this provides an opportunity for our kids. It's really a gift. I look at it as a gift of 6.5 to 7, 8 hours a day of personal device, prohibition of the use of those devices, as long, and school districts. And I commend Edgewood ISD and those other school districts. I am heartened by the number of school districts out there that are following the plain language in the bill, following the spirit of the bill, because they know what the positive outcomes are going to be.
Yeah, a few follow-ups there. But first, for people that might be watching and they don't know what that book is, The Anxious Generation, can you provide just sort of like an overview about what the theme of that book is and what you learned from it?
Yeah, so Jonathan Haidt is the author of The Anxious Generation, and he has 4 recommendations of how we can bring back, have more of a positive mental health with our young people and bring back. And one of the 4 items is the fact that we need phone-free schools. Mm-hmm. And that has really started the momentum that we've seen that has just grown across the United States.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a question from a viewer, which is, why is Northeast ISD allowing students to use their phones during lunch and passing periods? Is that so? I will say I'm working actually on a story on this, and so I can weigh in on this as well. But is there anything, I guess, that you would have to add, or just like on the importance of, you mentioned school districts following the whole kind of intent of the law. So what's your response to seeing that?
Right. So the intent behind the law, and all of the conversations that I've had with all of the members that I worked with on this bill, was that this was a first bell to last bell. It is not defined that way in the law. It says they must be prohibited, the use of prohibited during on campus during the school day. Now, TASB, Texas Association of School Boards, has put out their model policy as well as their legal guidance that includes passing periods and lunchtime. TEA, Texas Education Agency, has also put out their model policy that says it is first bell to last bell. And so, I've been doing this work for 10 years. There will always be school districts out there that don't follow the intent of the law for whatever reason that they choose to do this. I like to concentrate on those school districts that are following the intent and the spirit of the law, because they understand what the positive impacts of those are going to be for students. We're going to see, and school districts are already the ones that were proactively doing this on their own before the law passed. We're seeing those test scores rise, and we're seeing the mental health of their young people much better. Empathy, the peer-to-peer relations, less fighting, less vaping, less cyberbullying, all of those positive outcomes that we want to see. I mean, a child's mental health is so important to their ability to be able to learn, and that's what we've really been focusing on.
Yeah, and for additional clarity too, so the TEA issued guidance saying that school districts can define what a school day is in Northeast and Alamo Heights have taken the approach of defining a school day as just instructional time, which means that lunch, passing periods are not technically the school day, which is what I guess under the law might allow students to still have their phones. And so we have some other questions coming in through the chat, and I think this would be a good one for you, Dr. Hernandez, about, we've seen a rise in teachers utilizing technology in the classroom for lessons. One viewer wants to know, will teachers continue to allow students to utilize cell phones for educational purposes, or how does that sort of impact classroom instruction?
Well, for the teacher that's actually using that as a tool, we also have most of our classrooms, and I think most school districts have, we call them CALs, computers on wheels. And so you have devices that are sanctioned by the school district. They are used for a particular lesson for a particular moment, and the teacher even has the capacity to look through their own iPad what's happening on the other iPads too, in case you have anybody sort of getting off assignment, right?
Yeah.
And so I think there are opportunities to extend the learning while in the classroom. Now, there's also extended activities that a student can do at home. Now, once they go home, obviously, we try to educate parents on the importance of phone use, being a good digital citizenship. There's actually there's actually an 8th grade course that students take in the curriculum that teaches about digital citizenry.
Wow.
And then, of course, we try to teach our parents through workshops and conversations like that. But it used in the right context and used under the right supervision, students can use it as an extension outside of the school. But then that's where the parent partnership comes into play.
Yeah.
Like really educating parents on what the phone is really meant for, and then monitoring. I mean, obviously it's age appropriate. They're all very different stages of life. And then we also talk a lot about mental health. I am personally an advocate of it just because for my own self, a lot, as a person, I've suffered on my own. But I think talking about and elevating that in a platform for the platform that I have is important.
Yeah.
It affects all of us. I think we have to demystify what people think it is and it isn't. And so in the classroom, we try to teach those things, but also make sure that we are managing still the appropriateness of teaching, extended learning, because the students are native to digital learning.
Yeah.
So to take that completely out in terms of it not being supervised, probably not the best thing to do. And let's just be honest. They're not on the computers every day. There's not a technology extension in every lesson. And so we try to supervise that because obviously here's the other side. Now this is the teacher in me speaking. It's hard to also control everything that the teachers do.
Yeah.
Because we want to make sure that teachers also have I'm going to go back to what Todd said, the ability to inspire kids and really why they come into the profession. And most of our teachers, obviously we all know, nobody comes in for the money. Nobody comes in for they come in because they love children.
Yeah.
And they come in because they want to be a part of someone's living history. And the way you do that is by inspiring them, teaching them, and then showing them how to use things properly. So again, that digital citizenry class is really important in those middle school grades, which is where we see a lot of that, the mental health starting to drop with our students as early as 5th grade in a lot of instances.
Wow.
And so it's important that we teach properly because we don't, I hate to say this, but a lot of times it's the streets, the other folks that are teaching our kids how to use cell phones and things, and not in a healthy way.
Yeah. Another question for you, a viewer is curious about the type of support that a teacher will receive if a student is on their phone and then refuses to give it to the teacher.
So we also have regulations that we have to live by, and that we've also worked with our administrators in Edgewood. What are the consequences of a student who continuously violates? Because this is a law. This is not the same as a policy or anything else. This is a state law. So obviously, parent partnerships are important. There are steps that we elevate that consequence, and then if we have to remove a student, then we will exercise that right. Up until week 4, haven't had to do that.
Okay.
But I'm also hearing a lot from the kids, and I heard this last year. We talked about there's connected issues here. There's also, you talked about referrals. What are the benefits of not having the cell phone out all the time? And kids will tell you, you aren't getting bullied. You aren't going to the office because someone's sending rumors. This is their words, not mine.
Yeah.
There are rumors going on about you. And then I feel like I have to defend myself.
Yeah.
And so those are also other positive things that are happening as a result of how we're working with our parents, educating our parents. And in some cases, if it comes to that, we have to stand our ground too.
Yeah.
We're not going to lose everybody over 1 or 2 people.
Yeah.
The reality is this is the law, case closed, and a conversation. You will follow it.
We went last year and implemented it. And one of the things that we talked about was that question of teachers that said, well, can they use their phone for X, Y, and Z? And we started to come up with a list. And pretty soon we might as well just use our cell phone the entire time.
Yeah.
So I made a decision. No, you can't, because we have a technology-rich district. And anything I can do on my phone, I can do on an iPad or a Chromebook in the class. And also added to that was this supported the teacher because the teacher's not having to go over there and look to see, are you on your phone doing the activity or are you on Instagram? Because one of the things that's very challenging when we pass laws like this is we ask teachers to enforce one extra thing in the classroom. That's why consistency is so important. And so the answer was, no, you can't. You cannot use it for Kahoot. We can use Kahoot on a Chromebook. We can use it on this. What about building a Google slide? We can use it on this or we can use it on that, not your cell phone.
Yeah.
So I would say to that person, we have the technology rich district. Let's use it and let's use it because that's better. And you brought it up. It's vetted. There are safeguards that are in there.
Right.
You can't sneak off to something else where I could do that on my phone at any point when the teacher's managing a class of 28 to 35 kids.
Yeah.
So I think consistency is key. And I think also drawing that line to say, if you do not comply, like we'll work through this, but at the end of the day, this is our expectation and you need to do that. And
Yeah.
at my previous school, we had one kid last year that refused. One kid that complied. Now we would have to go and help and support teachers. You've got a choice, put it away or you come with me. Most kids would decide to put it away because they don't want to lose that. But we only had one that said, I'm good. And we had to do discipline with that child that decided not to.
Huh.
So it's not as big a deal. It's consistency, I think,
Right.
that's key.
Yeah.
Have to be consistent.
You were in a parent-facing role, like as a principal. We have a question. A lot of parents have voiced opposition to this law because they want to be able to communicate with their kid in the case of an emergency. School shootings often, that's kind of the argument that comes up. What would your response to that be? That kind of big criticism of the bill of cutting off communication between a parent and their child?
Yeah, it's I don't know if I'll ever change anyone's mind when it comes to that, right? But we have to think differently. When I was in school, if you needed to get a message to your child, you called the office and a message was sent to the child. There's an opportunity at the end of the day to check your message. In the event that there's an incident on campus, kids would be able to access their phone in their backpack to be able to communicate with parents is what I would say. Now, I'm not on a campus. I don't know the answer to that. But if there's an incident in Edgewood, like I don't know if the teacher is going to say to them, hey, put phones away, put phones away. You're going to be able to communicate with parents in the worst case scenario. So I would say to parents, take a deep breath. We're in week 4. And if you haven't texted your kids yet and they've made it home each day and they're happy, then I'd say we're going to be good this whole school year. And honestly, at the end of the day, you can communicate anything that your kid can see at 3:30 or 4 o'clock. And if it's real important emergency, you call the campus. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
And parents, we're sometimes the worst when it comes to perpetuating this problem. And, I want to text my kids and say, I love you and have a great day. And that's important to say, right? Because we want to send good luck on your test today, biology. I know you studied hard, but you got to realize that we're in a partnership and we're supporting the school, we're supporting your child, and it's a triangle. Like we have to all be here. And so at the end of the day, have ice cream ready for your kid to ask how the biology test went. Don't text them, because the kid's going to look and then you put the teacher in a bad spot, you put the AP in a bad spot, you put the kid in a bad spot. So I would say you've done a good job of communicating that to parents up front. It's a law. Here's how we're going to handle it. Here's what we need from you parents.
Right.
Because if you don't help parents, if you're pushing back, then you put us in a bad spot.
Yeah.
This is a law that was created. And now we're enforcing the law. So mom, I need you, or dad, I need you to help me in this situation. So it's educating a parent.
Yeah.
I agree. And I think the other part of that is really talking to the parent about what are the other benefits, the benefits that they may not think about because it may not be the language in the home. For example, mental health. Think about the opportunity you're giving your child to give them an 8-hour day where they're actually being a teenager, focusing on learning. Ultimately, this is why we send them to school, right? We want them to graduate. We want them to move on to the next stage in life. So we are simply protecting the space for your child to get the best education that they can. I've not met too many parents that argue with that. So I think it's also for those of us that are school leaders is we don't have to get flustered about a parent that's upset. I think it's really staying calm and really having the conversation and saying, this is where your piece of this pie works. We need you to support it because that teacher in the classroom that's going home every day, preparing lessons and doing everything they can to support your child needs you to make sure that in advance you had the conversation about the benefits of not having the phone.
Yep.
But then also that if the child needs to see you, they can wait till the end of the day.
Yeah.
I mean, 9 times out of 10, most things can wait till the end of the day.
Yeah.
And so it's conversations. There's still importance about go get to know your teacher first up front. Go get to know the campus principal. I mean, get to know the school. I mean, like go see the school. Those things still matter. We've become this society that we're just constantly running to the next thing and we bypass each other. It's like we don't even see each other half the time. And so I think it's really just slowing that back down, and not getting flustered because someone didn't like a rule. It's just this is the rule. Consistency is the key. you'll have more people that will be more appreciative of the fact that you're protecting that space, which we all claim is really important. What is that?
Yeah.
The classroom.
Yeah.
And students, I'll last thing before you go to your next question, students will rise to whatever level of expectation that you set for them. And if everybody enforces it, 85% of children will follow what you say because it's consistently enforced. So I think if you set the bar high, kids will reach that level.
Absolutely.
And I would just like to add that, I think the first thing that comes to parents' mind is, a terrible event that's happening on the school campus. And to that regard, I completely understand that. I think we all understand that. And it's a reality for, unfortunately, a lot of school districts. But all of the school safety experts have said that you really don't want the children on those phones. You want them in an emergency situation. You want them paying attention to their teacher and whoever is guiding them to safety. You do not want that phone to be going off, a notification or a light going off when they're supposed to be hiding to alert, any kind of danger towards them. And then lastly, the communications, jamming the communications when we're trying to get emergency folks into the schools to be able to de-escalate the situation. So it's really important. If you ask the parent the question, do you want to put your child in the most safest position as possible, or do you want them to be texting you in the middle of an emergency?
Yeah.
And when they look at it like that, they go, oh my gosh, that makes such complete sense. So just sort of maybe making sure that we're giving that information and that we're telling our parents what we're doing on each of our campuses in order to be for safety measures for students.
Absolutely. And we have a question for you as well. Somebody asks, what warning signs should parents be aware of when it comes to their children being bullied online or being just addicted to their phones?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, first of all, a child who's being bullied, you're going to have and the mental health issues are going to look very similar. They're going to have a change of habits. They're going to maybe sleep more or sleep less. They're going to be more secretive or using their device more often. Their eating habits are going to change. They're not going to want to go to school. And they may not be able to voice that. A lot of students who are cyberbullied are afraid to talk to an adult because it's so humiliating. And the vast nature of social media cyberbullying is that it can, the rate in which it can blow up and expand and go viral is so difficult for a child to even comprehend. And I think we're really good about telling our kids, don't post anything online because once it's online, it's going to stay there forever. But then you have to remember that child who is the target of that is hearing that same information. And they're thinking, that's out there, it's going to be out there forever, and I'm never going to be able to get away from it. So we have to reframe that conversation and making sure that students have each other's back, and that there is that bystander effect, that bystanders will think the next person is going to intervene or report it, but everybody has a responsibility to report these incidents on campus, and to make sure that they have a trusted adult. I think we're doing really well in our schools trying to make sure that there's a lot of connection and that every child has a teacher or an administrator that they feel close to, that they can reach out to in a time of crisis.
Yeah. You mentioned the bystander effect and just encouraging people to report things when they see them. For a student that's either experiencing cyberbullying or sees it happening to a peer, what is the best way to report it? Do they go to school officials? Should they just tell a trusted adult? Like, how would you kind of advise them?
Yeah, so a couple of different ways. David's law required that every school district have an anonymous way of reporting cyberbullying. And so that's one way. If a student or a bystander doesn't want to do that in person, they can certainly use the school's, whatever method that is that the school utilizes. And they can also tell an administrator or a school counselor, or a teacher. Teachers and school counselors, if they have a report of that, they are required by law under David's law to take that to the administrator on that campus, who is deemed the responsible person that takes all of those investigations and hand that information over. It is not up to the teacher or the school counselor to determine whether or not bullying or cyberbullying occurred. It is their responsibility to turn that into that administrator.
Gotcha. And kind of this reminds me of the topic of digital citizenship, that class that you had said. Is that a required class for middle schoolers? We have a question sort of about, whether that's something that the TEA might consider developing a curriculum that's like, required. It seems like Edgewood made the decision
So
independently.
it's a part of another course. So
Okay.
you're not going to see a course that says digital citizenry.
Okay.
There are lessons that are inside of another career and technology course
Okay.
that students select. So I say that because it's come up in a lot of my conversations with kids. And so when you were talking about, I think you said bystander.
Yeah.
What I find with things like bullying, cyberbullying, is that the earlier that you can educate, the better we will be in the long run.
Mm.
So for early childhood programs, and when I say early childhood, I mean 2, 3 years, because we start them as early as actually as early as 6 weeks in our district.
Oh, wow.
This is when parents are so young that, and I can recall being that age and not knowing what to do with my daughter.
Yeah.
You're learning what's good parenting. A lot of times, what we do is we think the way we were taught with our parents, and nothing against anyone's parents, is the right way to do things. So we have to educate about how we have conversations in our families, how we elevate things like mental health, and then you adjust that age appropriately. So that's where guidance comes in. We offer guidance throughout the regular school day, and I know because I hear it sometimes. Oh my God, but I have all these things to teach. They can't receive what you're teaching if they're too anxious in their mind.
Yeah.
And our children do not have a robust enough language, emotional language. All they know is good, bad, I feel not good, I feel worse. We have these extreme words, but they cannot express how they're feeling. So when you were saying about they stop eating, they pull back from society. They don't want to hear anything. It's because they don't know how to communicate. So I think for us, we're looking for those opportunities through guidance, through anonymous opportunities, if someone's willing to speak up, through also other activities that build self-esteem. That could be athletics, that could be robotics, that could be STEM, art, all the other programs that build a healthy, roundabout child, but also teaching children that it is okay to have a conversation about I'm not feeling well. We a few years ago we started implementing these check-in posters. So when kids come into the classroom, they do check-ins. If they go to the restroom, typically they do it when they come from the cafeteria. How am I feeling? And it's got kind of like at the hospital where it says, how's your level of pain? You got the little faces. Well, it's the same. The kids will come in and just tap. And the teacher, the expectation is that they're watching.
Yeah.
You tend to see it better with the elementary and middle school. High school kids sort of think it's goofy. But when I talk to them, I'm like, so how are y'all feeling today? They're a little better able to tell you. But it's still, I find for us in general, I think in society, it's still such a taboo conversation to have. So again, guidance, education, and facing it, not looking away, because it's sometimes we have our own ideals of what mental health is or isn't. We have a responsibility to our school communities, to our fellow staff members, because let's not forget adults have those issues too, is creating the environment so that we can talk about these things and better help our kids who are walking around. I guess I've been doing this for 28 years, and I walk around and you can tell with some kids,
Yeah.
they're walking around, they look troubled. And so sometimes it's just, hey, how are you doing today? It really just, they want to be seen. And so we have an opportunity first it's now with the phone law, but there's other opportunities to really just through guidance and education. I'm a big advocate of that. So
We have a question from earlier too, when we were talking about just Edgewood's policy. Somebody also wants to know about the enforcement. Is that sort of squarely on the teachers, and also what are the consequences? I know there's sort of levels, and it also depends district by district, but can you talk a little bit about a student at Edgewood, if they take their phone out, what sort of do the consequences look like, and how does that sort of like get
Right.
worse?
So it would look very similar to any infraction in the classroom in terms of if the teacher sees the classroom, what we try to teach them is don't disrupt the lesson, because now you want to turn that into a big issue with the student. I think you have a sidebar conversation with the student. You know the expectation, and that's for all the classrooms. You know the expectation. Put your phone up. 9 out of 10 kids are going to put the phone up. You're going to have the
backpack or somewhere else?
in the backpack, in their backpack. Then you're going to have the kid, I'm not going to do it. Okay. That's not the place to have that discussion. Let the office know, I need some assistance. Then comes in the administrator.
Okay.
I need you to put your phone up. That I'd say half of that 1% that I left will put the phone up, and then you're going to have I'm not doing it. So the expectation is, you know what? Why don't you come with me and we can have a discussion somewhere else? Because what you also don't want to do is you don't want to rob 30 other kids of an education because one chose not to. And then at that point, because we have a handout that we give out our parents, then you can bring the parent and say, this was clearly stated. It's not only in the handbook, and mind you, handbooks now there's so much info. I know it's hard to read those. So for this particular thing, we've actually created something a little more shorter and to the point, so parents can have it.
Okay.
They can review it with their students. But the parents that I've talked to is like, look, all I know is that it's there's a law, and if there's a law, that's all I need to know. That really did change it for folks, because I think people think that if it's a school policy, well, I can pick and choose.
Yeah.
This is a state law, and so I think that's helped us out a lot. So it elevates. I've yet to see a student that we've had to remove to alternative school over a phone
Okay.
in my years.
When would that happen?
That would be after, for us, it'd be after, I think, the fifth occurrence.
After.
This is after even the parents reluctant.
Yeah.
But again, I haven't seen any yet, but that would be after those many times.
You know, I've heard superintendents say just in general that there are too many state mandates coming down from the legislature, and that school districts don't have enough independence or autonomy to create these policies themselves to determine what works best for their own communities. Is there any part of you that agrees with that maybe this is something that school districts should have devised on their own? Or does it help you when the state says, you know, this is something that is a law across the board? You know, where do you kind of, what
So
are
I
your
think there's an arena for everything. I think there are certain expectations that the state has that we will enforce, because we also teach children to respect the law and order. So how's the superintendent going to look? If the superintendent says, we'll cherry pick this, we cherry pick that. So the first arena I have is to be a teacher. I started as a teacher and I'm going to end as a teacher. I mean, that may not be my title today, but I'm always teaching. And so we will respect the rule of law. If we don't agree with it, then that's what my student luncheons were for. If you don't agree with this, so what does the democratic process say? You reach out to your elected officials. You let them know how you feel. You can also you can show, hey, we implemented. So our two high schools actually started a couple years before, a soft roll.
Okay.
I said, show that you've cried, show the outcomes, show the true outcomes. Don't show what you wanted to make it look like. And then you share it with your elected officials. You have to let the democratic process work the way it's supposed to. If the majority says, hey, you know what, you make a good point, maybe we're going to reconsider, fine. But if the majority says no, then you will respect it. And when you don't agree, go get elected.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fundamentally what democracy is about.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have too many teachers that were like, oh, no, we shouldn't do this law. I think it really, in many cases, helped the teacher in the classroom. And honestly, I think administration too, because a lot of times when they did have to grapple with it, there are other mandates. So I'll meet you in the middle. There are other mandates that administration has to follow. So this is one less thing they have to police, because people understand it's the law.
Yeah.
And you're going to see less kids in the office, because now you don't have the cyberbullying. You don't have such and such call me out of my name. This is their words, not mine. And so that allows more time for the things that matter, which is teaching. And then this is the fall season. We got homecoming, we've got football, instead of worrying about other things that distract from that. So I think there's an arena for everything to teach children, but you must respect the rule of law. That's bottom line.
Yeah.
Please.
Can I add just one thing? So within the bill, HB 1481, there was local control was given in there. So the law is that there's a prohibitive use of those personal devices on campus during the school day. But where there's local control, it can either be a ban completely from the school, or a secured method of storage. And then within that, school districts also have local control on how do they determine what that storage is. Is it a storage pouch? Is it in the backpack? Is it a phone locker? Is it manila folders that are locked up in the office? So there was a lot of flexibility in that. And we are seeing most school districts are not banning them from
seen that.
I haven't seen any either. And so the storage method was the way to go. But interesting enough is that Commissioner Morath in the interim also talked about phone bans. And so that's why that was an option that was provided in that bill. That was his recommendation to the legislature, was to consider a ban. And then also within the discipline category, it's like they get to determine, local control gets to determine what are those levels of discipline, as well as how are they going to enforce that. So there was plenty of local control that was explicitly given in the bill.
Yeah. You know, we have a question about if there are any restrictions in the bill for phone use by teachers or by admin. This user says it's difficult for kids to follow a rule that is not also followed by adults. I'm curious if you have a response to that.
I have heard that, and I think one of these gentlemen would be better to answer that question.
I figured I was going to. So I think, again, it goes back to the conversation about why it's important to not have the phones. I think most teachers, because they're too busy teaching, they're not on their phone.
Yeah.
They're not. And I would say, I would venture to say 90% of teachers are too busy. For the 10% that are, then typically that may be another problem that we need to address on a personnel side.
Yeah.
That's different. And of course, you work with human beings, you're going to have all types of people. So I think you want to model the behavior, you want to discuss the behavior, but we're talking about learning time right now. And so I would have an issue with the teacher who's, rather than teaching, is making a phone call.
Yeah.
Or is surfing the web. I mean, if you're extending an activity and using technology, but you're ignoring the kids because you're on your phone, that's an issue. But that's a local issue at each school. Obviously, we have control as a school district, but that becomes a personnel issue at that point. But again, I think kids are sensible. If you stop and you have the explanation for why the ban came into play, and that it's to protect their learning time. I don't know too many kids that fight with you on, well, no, I don't want you to protect my learning time.
Yeah.
Well, then why are you here?
Yeah.
It doesn't happen. Contrary to what you may see in movies or what you may see on wherever, kids don't fight that.
When I journeyed around campuses and I talked to kids about what we had implemented, besides saying they knew more names than they had in the past, there was lots of feedback on, I don't have to study as much at home because I'm retaining the material in class.
Mhm.
The distraction is gone. And, those are those things that make it worth going in and enforcing it and having those hard conversations with kids that may not want to enforce it, because we went with ours was just our policy. And so it was a soft rollout, and it wasn't perfect, but it helped this year. It's got to help this year because we had implemented it last year.
Mhm.
So I think, as you mentioned, kids are very savvy. And if it means I don't have to study more at night, then I will put my phone away in a very challenging class like chemistry or, physics or one of those along those. I would also say I deferred the question to you and I shouldn't have, but the question, if I went into a classroom and a teacher was on their phone and kids were off task and distracted, that's the conversation that I'm having with the teacher.
Yeah.
Like, what is the objective? And did you realize, you might have 4 kids off task and 4 kids not doing what they're supposed to. So that corrects itself.
Yeah.
I also do think that adults are adults. And if adult needs to check in on their elderly mother or their child or doing something, there is a little bit of leeway for that to be done in moments, small moments, not why I'm lecturing and not why I'm in front of the class. So I do think we have to treat adults like adults in the camp and on the campus also, but also have those high expectations to say, you know what, your kids will do what you model for them.
Yes.
And if you're over here underneath doing this, then they're going to do the same thing and,
Yeah.
and they're going to realize that. So I think it's a tough thing for an adult, but I think it's the right thing to do.
And the other piece is every campus has a campus principal. And we're, like I said, this is the 4th week of school. We're still sort of getting into our patterns for the year, but that initial conversation with the faculty, that's another thing we had a conversation with principals on. Have the conversation of first the merits of why they wanted something like this to happen, but also talk about, so what's our part in it? So back to the rule of law and modeling what's expected. So as a teacher, be very cognizant that if you're walking around on the phone like now you're in high school, you work at a high school, you're not in high school, then what are you saying to the kids? Oh, laws are great for you, not for me.
Right.
So be very cognizant of that. Yes, life will happen, but that's why we are able to speak to, hey, my mom's not doing well. I've got to be able to, you know what, front office knows, we will work through that as we've always done.
Yeah.
So this didn't change that. We just need to be open about the conversation and remind adults you are modeling that behavior. When you don't do that, you make it difficult for all of us. It just takes one of you to do it because they're still kids too. Oh, well, how come his so-and-so doesn't?
Yeah.
So yeah, you.
That was the feedback I received last year from kids that were like, if all of us teach Algebra 1, if 3 of us are enforcing it, but you're not, then kids are going to have a problem with that because why can those kids in her class do it?
Correct.
Yeah.
And so we also talked at that initial conversation with the faculty about, you're going to do this because this is our policy, but you're going to do this for you and you and you, because we're all going to do it together. And if you don't, you're letting down your colleagues for what it was. And that's a powerful motivator, I think, with adults.
Yeah. I'm curious your insight on this, Mr. Bloomer. Somebody asked do you think that this cell phone ban, the law, will address kind of the root cause of distraction in schools, of some of the lowered academic outcomes that we've seen post-pandemic? Or is it just kind of a surface level solution that doesn't?
No, I definitely think if we take the mindset that kids are at school to learn, then that right there is a win already. Because in the past, kids might not have come to school to learn. They're there for a lot of other things. And kids come to school for athletics and band and all those other type of things. But the distractions of them are not going to be permanently gone, but they're going to be gone between 8 and 8:50 when I'm supposed to be in Algebra 1. And I'm able to focus on what I'm supposed to be doing. So honestly, more time on task, teachers inspired to do the things that they love to do, which is teach and not police little thing, classroom management issues. There'll still be class managers, but the cell phone issues. retention has to go up.
Hmm.
Great, we saw it last year. Failure rates went down, grades went up, discipline referrals went down, accountability scores, STAR scores will continue to rise as we have more time on tests because kids are focused. And now if I know you, I can ask you for help by name instead of just saying, well, I'm afraid to ask. Well, now I know because we don't have a phone for a distraction. I'm just going to ask and we may be able to help that way. So I 100% think this is going to have outcomes 5 years down the road that we might not have thought about, but academically we're going to see the fruits of that because of this.
I think the other outcomes that we may not be talking about is increased attendance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Students staying in one place. I think the attendance is going to go up. We talked about referrals. I think you're also going to have students, and this is one thing I'm planning to do with my lunch meetings with the kids is let's talk about the benefits. Now that we've been doing this, because I don't start those till October. Now that we've been doing this for 2 months, let's talk about the benefits. You also have to open it up to, are there some disadvantages? But I think when you again, offering the opportunity to speak up and continue to reinforce the rationale for it and why it still remains important, just continues to change that culture.
Yeah.
And I'm going to pick up what he mentioned about. Now I'm not afraid to talk to you.
Yeah.
Because I see that I see with adults. I know you on social media, but when I look at you, oh my God, I can't. I mean,
Yeah.
kids are going through that. To them, it's different than us because they still don't see the life has so many more phases for them. We know that what happens on a Monday may, it's not going to necessarily maybe affect the rest of your life, but to them, it's in that moment, they can't see anything else. And so I think just continuing those conversations, we're going to see those types of outcomes. I think you're also going to see just happy kids running around school.
Yeah.
And I define happy as kids that are in a cafeteria talking.
Right.
Because when I go visit before, they were on that phone.
Hmm.
No different than when you go to whatever your favorite restaurant is,
Yeah.
and you see a family of 4, a husband and wife, and the whole time no one's talking. I think the waitress or waiter gets more attention, like, I want this, and then that's it.
Yeah.
And so we lose, for us in education, we learn how to speak, write, and express advocacy through opportunities. The phones have taken that away. And also some responsibility too, because I think we become keyboard ninjas. This is a kid taught me this word. Oh, keyboard ninja on the other side, but they don't say nothing in front of me. And I'm like, okay, let me clean that up for you.
Yeah.
I think what you mean is you're learning to take responsibility for your words. Yeah, that sounds even better.
Yeah.
I'm
There
like,
you go.
well, a lot of times that happens. So again, we're constantly educating. We're going to see great outcomes out of this.
I commend you for the lunches because like a lot of times as school leaders, we seek input from staff. How's it going? What's going on? We seek input from parents, PTA organizations. How's it going? And we fail to seek input from kids. And they're there all day long. I mean, we're doing school to them at some point. So giving them an opportunity to be able to express what's going well, and also opening up to say, okay, what are the challenges? I'm here. Like, I'm your superintendent. I am here. Tell me the challenges. We'll work through these. I think you're modeling for that, something that's amazing. And I hope all schools do that.
They're the client.
And I'd like to add, so when we're talking about those positive outcomes and the test scores increasing, kids are turning in their homework, they're being able to have these conversations in their classroom, and they're being able to do group work much better. But let's talk about if it's just instruction time only. So if kids are allowed to have these devices during the passing period, what research is showing is that 5 minutes before the bell rings, that student is thinking about opening up their device, what are they going to check first? And their mind is not on task on what their school. And then we're also seeing that a lot of students are coming in tardy during passing period because they're still on their devices, still checking things out. Their mind is still, if they walk into that classroom, their mind is still thinking about what they just experienced. The whole business model of engagement for enragement is what our kids are seeing on their devices. So how can we expect them to turn that off when they walk into a classroom? That is why it is so much better just to eliminate it throughout the entire school day. Like I said before, this is a gift to students and their mental health and their school experience.
Yeah. Well, I think too about the fight pages. I had talked to Mr. Bloomer a while ago about them, and so many of those fights that were breaking out on campus were during passing periods or during lunch, and that's when the kids could all pull out their cell phones and record. But we have a question and a little bit of a comment from one attendee who I think you might have an interesting perspective. So this person says that now that students are not allowed to have their phones in classrooms, classrooms, are cameras in classrooms being considered so that acts of bullying can still be recorded to replace some of the transparency that has been lost because of the phone ban? And this viewer says that they are a parent of a student who has been bullied, and relief was only found with video evidence that the student was able to obtain on their own. And they say, now with this phone ban, my student would have been disciplined for obtaining the evidence that gave them relief. So yeah, I mean, I think anybody really might have an interesting perspective there, but
Yeah, I mean, I would think that in a situation like that, if a student was being harmed, let's say in a bathroom, and another student, whipped out their phone to videotape that, I would think that there would be, some type of like reasonable, conversation that we would have with that student, right? Anytime that there's a school safety issue, anytime a child is being harmed, we need to do everything that we possibly can to ensure their safety on campus. I will say that, kids who report these incidents verbally to school personnel, those are taken very seriously. And we also know that there are cameras not inside bathrooms and locker rooms, but there are cameras outside of these, and where school administrators are able to look to see who's coming in and out of those rooms. So, that's a very unfortunate situation, but I do feel like that everybody is reasonable in this particular situation. And if there was a situation of an emergency, I think that there would be, some pause there.
yeah. Somebody says the lesson starts at home, and they're curious if districts will provide any sorts of workshops for parents on how to direct their kids on phone use, something other than just like forms that are being provided. Do you?
I can speak to that.
Yeah,
I mentioned it earlier, so
Yeah.
I think that all starts early on in the relationship with parents. As early as I mentioned, the 6-week-olds, early young parents need different types of education. Elementary parents need different types of education as well. So workshops, and not just for parents. Let's not forget grandparents.
Yes.
We have a lot of grandparents who are raising children now, and it's a very different mindset. And so educating them on what to look for. A perfect question earlier. How do you know when a child is being bullied? So looking at first, let's identify what is bullying. That's constant. What is it? And then the second thing, how do we start having conversations before it even happens? I think they're age appropriate. I've been to one of our workshops that we have, and when they go into 4th grade, we talk about the big change from 3rd to 4th grade. And now they're a lot more active. They're a lot more mentally aware of the world. So as families, let's have a conversation before it even happens. What do you do in these types of scenarios? Defining friendship. What is an actual healthy friendship? Because a lot of kids, unfortunately, want to be a friend at all costs. Well, some friendships aren't good friendships. So I think workshops, conversation again start with the teacher, with your local administrator. And then we also have extended agencies. There are a lot of great agencies around our city that offer support for families. So as a school district, I think our job is to make sure that we know where those agencies are in our area, and then refer parents who need outside assistance, mental health collaboratives, things like that, because there are other trained professionals who are actually licensed in these types of things that can offer help, especially for our communities that are underserved, that don't really understand how to navigate these waters or don't want to talk about these kinds of things. There are other places that you can do that. And then, of course, in various languages. Of course, we serve children who speak multiple languages. And that doesn't mean that because you don't speak English, it's not happening in another language. And so I think education continues to be the key. Having the conversation, just take the taboo out of it. Let's talk about it. And don't wait till something blows up, because at that point, it's hard to really listen to people. We want them to listen before anything happens.
Yeah. I'm curious a little bit about like equity, and I think specifically about Edgewood's demographics that you guys serve. I can imagine that some people might think this bill could disproportionately impact kids who maybe are the caregiver of their family, or who have to work, an after-school job to provide, or whose, parents are single parents who work and need to communicate like changes for scheduling. I guess, how do we make sure their education isn't impacted more than their peers when they're already maybe at like a certain disadvantage with this bill?
So I think what we fail to do sometimes, we don't give kids credit enough to know how to adjust to their day. For the child who is a parent or a third parent, if you will, they have been learning to navigate the day, a 24-hour day, for most of their life. What they need is some advice that is not the parent, because your heart's pulling at you because maybe you're taking care of 3 or 4 siblings. I think from an adult perspective is, okay, so let's talk about where life is today for you. How do we navigate what's your first responsibility? At this age, it's getting an education. But I understand the responsibilities of helping at home too. So how do we do both? So a lot of times you sit with them, you talk it out with them, and then many times you got to bring the parent in, because I have found where parents who do put a lot of pressure on the kids. I can't do this if you don't help me. We won't eat if you don't do this. So there are going to be some very specific cases where you're going to have to, they may need to come to school a little later, or they may need, we have some work program. I don't know if that's the real name now, but they may need to leave early because they have a job. So when you don't know, you think every door's closed on you. So the education piece through our counselors too. Hey, I have to be at work at 3 most days. Okay, then we need to put you in a program so you can leave school at 2:30 or 2 o'clock. So we help them problem solve, which we don't do enough of in life. And children do it, they just don't know how to give it a name. We just got to help them through it.
Yeah. We have one person who wants to know what insights the panel can share on the permitted phone uses under the new law. But I think the clarification is that there aren't really none, right? It's before the bell and after the bell. Is that the
Right,
intent?
that's right. First bell to last bell.
First bell to last bell.
Yep. And there are some exceptions for medical.
Yes.
Yeah, for medical needs, with a doctor's or medical note, as well as 504, anything there, and then a school emergency situation. So in those particular situations. So there are some exceptions in there, and we are seeing school districts follow those exceptions.
Can you elaborate a little bit on what that means if like a student's 504 calls for phone use or a medical?
Yeah. So if a student uses an app for a particular reason, maybe it's helping them stay organized and it's written in their education plan.
Right.
So then they would be able to use their device for that particular reason. So, you have these ARDs and these ARD meetings, and you also have these plans that are put in place for students who have disabilities. In learning challenges, or just, just to stay organized. So yeah.
Okay, interesting. We have about 5 minutes left. This has gone quickly, but I want to take a moment to talk a little bit about some of the misconceptions, perhaps about the bill, and some of, maybe the backlash that you guys may have received from parents or community members. Is there anything that you want to kind of clear up about the intent of this law, the way that it will be enforced, and just the implementation?
Well, I'll start. The bill is, as far as I am concerned, the law is very clear. Those personal devices need to be prohibited, the use of those devices prohibited throughout the entire school day. And I will say, too, that the legislative history on the bill actually follows that. They started off as instruction time only, and then they moved to school day.
Oh, okay.
Both in the Senate and in the House version. So it's very important to look at that legislative history there to see how the bill evolved, as well as listening to that testimony. And we heard from Senator Betancourt that this was probably one of the most important bills that they were going to pass this session.
Yeah, I did note that in the testimony.
I think what I would advise parents is do the research. I mean, every ISD is incorporating it a little different. The law is the same. So read the law first, then look up the research for your ISD. What does the ISD expect? Look at the regulations they've put in place in terms of consequences. And then the most important part is go to the school. I mean, you have opportunities to visit parent-teacher night. You can schedule a conference with your teacher and or the principal. Schedule that time. Become informed on it. Find out how is it executed in this particular campus. And so I think those things are important. A lot of times people will make assumptions. Get informed, be supportive, and remember that this is to protect the instructional time and the instructional day for your child. Mm-hmm. That is the premise of why we're doing this. And so I'd say get educated on it.
And I'd love to know too, how will Edgewood kind of measure the success of this bill at the end of the school year, or even throughout it? Are there certain sort of metrics that you are going to be looking at?
So not just STAR. I think STAR is one thing most people know about, but we do all sorts of testing. We do MAP testing. We do just regular assessments. But I'm looking at attendance. I'm looking at the rate of kids visiting our counselors. We have social emotional learning counselors in our middle schools and high schools. So how many kids are they actually seeing in terms of guidance, in terms of how many folks we're also sending out to the mental health collaborative partners that we have? Those are other factors that are equally as important, down to how many times a child's at the nurses. A child who's bullied ends up at the nurse more so than they normally would. I learned that a long time ago when I was a high school principal. And I would go, hey, where are we with kids? Any kid that's been in here too much this particular 6 weeks? And you always had a small group. And then after the years, because I was there for a while, it was the same kid. and it was because they were being bullied. So that for me was an indicator that we would look for. So again, we would look at all of those things, absences, I think it's at attendance. And then also,
Can you quickly explain a little bit why you think it's going to help with attendance? That's something I'm curious about.
because a lot of times kids stay away. I
Okay,
think
if they're being
she mentioned earlier that if I know that something's making me anxious, I'm gonna stay away from it.
Okay, yeah.
So I'm not going to school. And so I think that's where we see those things. Grades and things like that. I think I look at even teacher attendance,
Yeah.
Mhm.
because sometimes teachers also like, oh God, I gotta go,
Yeah.
when the kids are more on track, then the teachers more, I can't be absent. They look forward to these things.
Yeah.
And so I think those are all indicators that you can keep up with.
Interesting. Mr.
I don't think I could top either of those two. I would just say to a parent that was apprehensive about it, that to take a look at your child's everything you talked about, attendance, mental health, grades, discipline, all of those things, and it's going to be trending in the right direction.
Mm.
And if they have issues or concerns, start with the principal. Don't go to Facebook and voice your concerns over Facebook or seek validation from social media. Don't go there. Go to the school, figure out how it's being implemented, figure out how, talk to a teacher if you have questions about it. And I think that's what we're in. We're in a people partnership business that we can work with people to be able to explain situations to them.
Yeah.
So I think it's an A+ of a bill.
Mm.
As far as I am for the schools, and it's gonna benefit teachers and parents and education, and more importantly, communities. It's gonna communities are gonna benefit 5-10 years down the road with the better qualified candidate that is graduating and going into the world to work or college or the military, wherever they're willing to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much again for taking time out of your days to come here and to talk to our viewers, answer their questions. And thank you guys for joining us, asking some great questions today. All of our NVivo events are posted on our YouTube, including this one, so you will be able to watch this after the fact. And if you have any insight on the cell phone ban, any other questions remaining, please reach out to me. Once again, I'm Melissa Mano, education reporter here at the Express News. So thank you guys so much and have a great rest of your day.